Hi.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook. My returning viewers, you might notice we have a little switch up on my set here today. Something that is out of the ordinary. You might see this little pumpkin pillow sticking out of the corner. And that obviously means that today I am finally bringing you my long-awaited fall book recommendation video. Guys, I don't know what has happened. Fall is my favorite time of year. This is my favorite season, and like it has just flown by. It's like one day I woke up and it was fall, and then all of a sudden it was October, and I haven't given you guys this video yet. So I am here to do that today, and I have the most beautiful list of books here. Like, I have come up with 10 books that I just love for this season, and we really have stuff all over the board. Like, I think there's a book here for everybody. We've got like the spooky season vibes, the paranormal vibes. We've also got some dark romance. I've even got some rom-coms in there that fit with this time of year. I've even got just like some cozy vibes. Like, really, it's all over the place. Like, there is a book for every single person on this list. Anybody that loves fall, that wants to feel the fall vibes, just grab one of these books and you should be able to do that. But yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's just get into it. Okay, so the first book I want to talk about is one that I actually just read in the last few days. It's funny, I found it at Barnes & Noble over a year ago. It was around spooky season at the time, and I was like, oh, this looks really cute. I want to try it out. It has proceeded to rot on my bookshelf for the last year. I just let it sit there, and I finally pulled it out this year, and I'm like, oh my God, it was so good. And also, I've seen literally nobody talk about it, and I don't know why, because like, it's so perfect, especially for fall season. It is The Wicked Deep by Shea Ernshaw. Basically, this story, it very much gives me Hocus Pocus vibes, if I just want to like entice you right off the bat with that. Basically, this story takes place in this small seaside town in Oregon, and this town has this legend that surrounds it. Basically, 200 years ago, these three sisters lived in this town, and they were accused of witchcraft. They were these very beautiful girls. They seduced a lot of men, which obviously meant that they were witches, right? So the town, against their will, basically sentenced them to death. They had rocks tied to their feet, and they were sent to drown in the ocean. And ever since that happened, every year on the day that the sisters were sentenced to death, they come back. So you hear the ocean singing. You hear the sisters singing from the ocean, and the legend basically says that each of the three sisters inhabits the body of a girl in this town, and they basically lure men into the ocean and cause them to drown. And a lot of people are superstitious about it. They're like, I don't really know if I believe it. Like, it seems a little silly, but inevitably every single year, young men turned up, like drowned in the water during this month that this sort of legend festival whatever is going on. So it appears to be real, but nobody really knows. So pretty much this year now, the same time is coming around. It is time for the Swan sisters to make their return, and in this story we follow this girl named Penny Talbot. She's lived in this town her entire life, and she's ready for this season to come about once again, but she ends up crossing paths with this new boy in town named Beau, and he's completely unaware of the town's history. He doesn't know about this legend at all, and so they've crossed paths, and the singing begins in the sea, and this whole ritual, this whole curse returns to the town once again. It is very obvious from early on that both Beau and Penny have secrets. They have things they're not telling each other and things that they're not telling us, and they're pretty much now working together to try to figure out like how to bring an end to this curse, because obviously it's horrible. Like, hundreds of men have died over the years. It's kind of like a bit of a mystery the whole time. You're trying to figure out like what is going on. Also, you don't know who to trust, because these, like, the Swan sisters inhabit these girls' bodies, but you can't tell that it's them. So it had me on the edge of my seat. I literally could not put it down. Like, I read this book in one sitting, and I know people say that. I know they're like, oh my God, I read this book in one sitting. People always say that. No, literally, I swear. I sat on this couch and I took like 2 bathroom breaks, but I could not put it down. I had to know what happened. And there was a plot twist in this book that made my jaw hit the freaking floor. Like, I do not know the last time I was so shook by a plot twist. Like, I was blown away. But so good for this time of year. I mean, all the witchy vibes, obviously it's literally about witches. It's in this small little town. Like, it just works. It's really cute. Again, kind of hocus pocusy, and not enough people are talking about it. So a good, solid Halloween time book. Okay, so the next book I want to talk about is a fairly new release, and seriously just one of my favorite books I've read all year. I just love it so much, and the concept behind it, I'm just like, it's so clever. Like, how did I not think of it? How has no one else thought of it before? Because it's just so cute. It just works so well. So good. but it is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. And basically, God, this cover's so cute. Every time I see it, I'm just like, I'm obsessed with it. It's so freaking cute. This story follows this girl named Florence Day, and she has been a writer for a very long time. All her life, she's been trying to be a writer, but she's never really found success in it on her own. So where she has found a success is actually working as a ghostwriter. So she actually writes books for the most prolific romance author pretty much in the world in this story. And the book is obviously published under that woman's name, but Florence is the writer. That's what it means to be a ghostwriter. But yeah, so Florence is having a hard time recently though, because she is obviously a romance writer, but currently, as of now, she no longer believes in romance. She no longer believes in love. She went through a really rough breakup a year ago, and ever since then, she's just like not been able to write the same way. Like, it's been really hard because she just doesn't believe her own words. Like, she just has the worst writer's block of her entire life. So at the start of this story, she learns that she has a new editor, and she has to go and face this editor because she is behind schedule. Like, she is going through it. She cannot finish this book in the allotted time that she has. So she goes to face this new editor in person, and he's very handsome. Obviously, he's very, very handsome, but he's very strict. He's very grumpy, and he's not having it with her crap. He's like, you need to write this book. We have a deadline. Like, you got to figure out how to get it done. So she is now even more down in the dumps. She's like, I got to finish this book. And while she's in the midst of this whole crisis, she gets a phone call from back home. She currently lives in New York, but she lived in this very small town across the country. And she gets a call from her family, and it turns out that her dear father has just passed away. So she actually has to go home to this small town that she has very much escaped from because she just didn't have a good time growing up. Her family actually owns the funeral home in this town, and like, that's what they're known for. And so she always got teased growing up. And on top of her family owning a funeral home, there's something very special about Florence. Along with being a ghostwriter, she can actually see ghosts. She can talk to ghosts. This is something that her and her father shared. She's been able to talk to ghosts her whole life, and a lot of times she's had ghosts come to her with like unfinished business. And yeah, these rumors spread throughout the town. So now it's like she owns a funeral home, she talks to ghosts. Like, basically she was just ridiculed and bullied out of this town, and she has no desire to go back. But now she has to go back, obviously, because she has to bury her father. So she returns to this town, and things seem like they cannot be worse. But then a new ghost appears to her, and he just so happens to be the ghost of her very hot, grumpy editor. So yeah, that's obviously a little crazy. This man appears to her, and she has to help him figure out, like, why have you appeared to me? I don't really know you. What is your unfinished business? Like, what is the meaning of all of this? All while she's trying to deal with like family issues and just her own issues with love and trying to write this romance novel. Like, there's so many aspects to this story, but it just was so cute. So freaking cute and warm and fuzzy, and it's like obviously got the paranormal aspects to it, it's got the spooky season aspects, but it's also really kind of like a rom-com at its core, like just a cozy rom-com. It just was so good. I loved it so much. Like, the whole time I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was not correct until the very end. I guessed what was going on like right before it happened, but it really, again, it had me on the edge of my seat. I really, really loved it. Okay, next, I want to talk about The Sun Down Motel by Simone St. James. This is another book that I don't understand why it doesn't have more hype. I feel like if you're a person that's really into thrillers, like, you've heard of this book, but if you're not a big thriller person, which, like, I say I'm not a thriller person, but every time I read a thriller, I love it, so I need to get more into them. That's another topic, but this book needs more hype, is my point, because it is just so good. Basically, this story takes place in two different timelines. The first timeline is in 1982, I believe. Yes, I remember that, so smart. It follows this girl named Vivian, and Vivian basically is just ready to start a new life. She's never been very close to her family, and so she is telling herself she's gonna drive to New York City and just start afresh there, but she never actually makes it to New York City. She ends up stopping in this small town called Fell in New York. And she ends up stopping at this motel on the side of the road, the Sun Down Motel, and she's just planning to stay there for the night. But it turns out this motel is actually in need of a nighttime clerk. Like, they need someone to work the desk during the graveyard shift. And Vivian doesn't really have any plans. She doesn't really know what she's gonna do. So she's like, you know what? I'll just take this job. I'll stay here for a little bit. I'll figure it out. So we follow Vivian in this story, and we see her working this graveyard shift at this hotel on the side of the road. She's always there all by herself at night, and very quickly it's obvious that there's some weird things happening at this motel, like paranormal weird things, but also just sketchy things in general. So you sort of like follow her journey and see what she's going through at this time. And then also we are switching timelines to present day, which is 2017 in this story. And we are following this girl named Carly. And in Carly's timeline, present day, her mother has just passed away, and this thing has always kind of like eaten up Carly. It's something she's always needed the answer to, and her mother was the only person that could have provided those answers. So now that she's dead, she's like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna figure this out on my own. So she basically decides that she's going to travel to Fell, New York, because she wants to find out what happened to her Aunt Vivian, because all people know is that one night she went in for her shift at the Sun Down Motel and she was never seen or heard from again. She literally up and vanished, and it's been an unsolved case forever. Nobody knows what happened to her, but she is poof gone. So she gets to Fell, she gets to the Sun Down Motel, and funny enough, they are once again in need of a night clerk. So Carly ends up taking this position, and she's literally like following in her aunt's footsteps. So we get to see Vivian's story in the past, and then we also get to see Carly's story present day, kind of following what Vivian was doing, trying to figure out like the life she led here and what could have happened and what's going on with this motel. You're seeing Carly firsthand experience a lot of these creepy, weird things that Vivian experienced. And the whole time you're trying to figure out what happened to Vivian, what's happening now, what is with this town, what is with this motel and this dark history behind it. It was so good. Like, this is a thriller, it's a mystery, it's a paranormal story. Like, it's got all these elements wound together, and I could not put this book down. And honestly, kind of scared the crap out of me. It gave me major paranoia for the first night that I read it. Like, I found myself like looking over my shoulder and stuff when I had to go downstairs in my apartment to get my mail. Like, it was one of those types of books. But so good, especially good for this time of year. I love the time jumps. I love the different like time periods and seeing the story connect. Like, it was just so good. So if you're into a thriller, check this one out. Okay, next, let's step away for a second from the spooky, paranormal, obviously fall books, and talk about a book that just is cozy. I mean, to me, fall screams football season, and this book is about a football player, so therefore, it's a fall book. It's also just one of my favorite books ever. It is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. Oh my gosh, I haven't talked about this book in a while. I'm like excited, but basically this story follows this girl named Vanessa, and she is the personal assistant to this man named Aiden Graves, who is a super popular, super talented NHL football player. And Aiden, though he's talented and very popular and very famous, in real life, he's grumpy. He's a grumpy man. He's not very kind. He keeps a very strict schedule, a very strict diet. He requires a lot from Vanessa, and she has been putting up with every bit of it for several years now. But he's never even like said thank you to her. He just doesn't appreciate her, and she's pretty much done with it. She's served her time. She has other dreams, other things she wants to do and pursue. So she basically puts in her 2 weeks, says she's gonna quit, and Aiden doesn't really have anything to say about it. He lets her go. And so she leaves, but it isn't too long before Aiden actually shows up on her doorstep begging for her back. And she's very thrown off by this because they're not friends. He's never been nice to her. They've never had any relationship outside of like her being his assistant, but he needs her back. And she's like, no, I'm not coming back. I'm doing my own thing now. I'm done with this job. But he ends up coming back again. He keeps coming back. So Vanessa eventually gets fed up. She's like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, there has to be something deeper going on here. Like, it's not that serious. Just get another assistant. And so it eventually is revealed that Aiden needs Vanessa for more than just being his assistant. He's actually in a little bit of trouble. He is from Canada, which hence the Wall of Winnipeg. That's what he's actually called in the NHL. He's from Canada, and his visa is up. It's going to expire, and he doesn't have his football contract in place yet for the next year, and he's pretty much going to be deported. So he kind of needs someone to marry. Marriage of convenience trope. We love it. And she's like, that's laughable. Why would I do that? What does that have to do with me? Anybody will marry you. And he's like, look, I can't stand anybody. And you know everything about my schedule and my life. You know my structure, how I operate. Basically, I could put up with you more than I could put up with anybody else. This is a very nice way of saying this. And basically, they end up striking up a deal that benefits both of them. It is very much a marriage of convenience. And so she agrees. And that is what this whole story is about. They're sort of, you know, fake marriage in front of the public, in the very public eye, and them having to live together and them navigating this entire situation. And it's just so good, y'all. It is so good. It is the slowest of slow burns because it is Mariana Zapata, but like, I just promise you, it is so worth it. Like, all the little things that happen throughout the book, like all the little moments, like it just, I love it so much. I think about this book all the time, and just being, you know, a football book, it feels like fall. It feels cozy. It makes me smile. So yeah, definitely recommend this one. All right, let's swing back into Paranormalville. Does that make sense? Let's talk about another spooky book, another straight up spooky book. Layla by Colleen Hoover. The most underrated Colleen Hoover book ever. Like, I don't feel like anybody ever talks about this one, and I don't know why, because it is seriously one of my favorite books by hers. It might be like my second favorite book by hers, and nobody talks about it, and it's just so good. It's so different from all of her other books. It is not your standard romance. It is very much a paranormal romance. It's very weird right off the bat. If you've read all of Colleen Hoover's other books and you start this book, you're gonna be like, this does not even feel like her type of vibe, and it's not, but she does it so well. Basically, this story follows this man named Leeds. Leeds is in a band, and basically there is one weekend that he is performing with his band at this wedding, at this like bed and breakfast resort hotel sort of thing, and he ends up encountering this woman named Layla, and Layla is just captivating. Like, he is instantly enthralled with her, head over heels in love. Like, they just fall swiftly in love with one another pretty much from the moment they meet. They are never separated again. They start their life together, and then pretty much something crazy happens. There's an accident, and Layla is kind of not the same after it. Like, it's a very traumatic, awful accident, and it takes a long time to recover, and like Leeds is very much there through all of it for her, but just, she's never, even months later, she's just not quite the same. And so he wants to sort of like reignite their love, like remind each other why they're together in the first place, cheer Layla up, make her feel better. So he basically decides that they are going to go back to this bed and breakfast hotel place where they originally met. But the thing about it is that it's actually no longer in use. It's been a while since I've read this, so maybe it's been like a couple years later, but it's not actively open anymore. Like, nobody else is gonna be there. So he ends up finding like the owner of it, and so they're getting to go and stay there for this extended period of time alone, which sounds really cute and fun, but Layla's like not thrilled by the idea. Like, again, she's just not feeling herself, but he convinces her. They decide to go there, and then shortly after getting there, Leeds encounters this ghost, essentially, this woman that he can only see, and her name is Willow, and he's not sure like what the deal is with Willow, like who she is, how she ended up here. Willow doesn't know herself, and so they sort of grow closer over time, and it's sort of like, again, a bit of a mystery, trying to figure out like what is happening here. There are some flashes in this timeline where we know what's going on present day, and I'm not gonna, like, it's hard to talk about this book without spoiling it, so I'm not gonna say much more, but you just know that like something crazy is going on and we don't know what it is. So figuring that out, just trust me, it is crazy, it is spooky, it is confusing, and then when it all just like ends, you're like, oh my God. Like, it's just so good, and again, so underrated. Like, more people need to read it. Okay, next I want to talk about Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton, and I just want to say right off the bat, this is not going to be a book that's for everybody. If you have trigger warnings, things you don't like, if you're not into super dark romance, you're not going to be into this one, so just skip it. But if you are into that, if you're into the spicy stuff, if you're into the crazy stuff, this is for you, because oh my God, one of my favorite books I've read all year. It was absolutely freaking bonkers. But this story follows this girl named Adeline, and she is an author, and she's about 24, 25-ish in this book, and basically her grandmother has passed away, and she's left behind this big mansion, this big estate to her, and it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's this creepy old mansion, but she doesn't care. She wants to go live there. She's going to accept it. Her mom and a lot of people around her, like, you shouldn't go live there, like that place has a dark history. Basically, her great-grandmother actually lived in this house as well, and she was murdered. So that's one thing, but along with that, there's just a lot of other weird things associated with this house. Like, it just gives bad vibes, but Adeline doesn't agree. She likes it there, so she's moving in. She's gonna live there. And shortly after living there, she ends up like she senses some things that are not right, some paranormal things, like she's getting some vibes, and she ends up coming across this journal that was her great-grandmother's journal, and she reads through it and she learns that her great-grandmother had this stalker that would just like stay outside her house and watch her, and there's all sorts of like weird, creepy things involved in it. So she's sort of like reading this, exploring this, trying to figure out what happened to her great-grandmother, when at the same time she doesn't realize right away, but Adeline has actually found herself with a stalker. And oh my gosh, this stalker man is enamored by Adeline. He doesn't know her, he simply just saw her from a distance, but he has claimed her as his, and he will not stop until she is his and nobody else's. Very much touch her and you die kind of vibes if you're into that. But what's so cool about this story is that it is told from Adeline's perspective, but it is also told from the stalker's perspective, and I love a good dual point of view. So good. He has all sorts of crazy things going on that he's involved in. He's very rich and powerful and very smart and knows how to get his way. So we're seeing their two perspectives. You're also seeing like journal entries from Adeline's grandmother, and you're kind of seeing this mirrored story where the great-grandmother had a stalker, now Adeline has a stalker, and the two sort of stories like weaving their way together. So good, so spicy, so dark and twisted, like very, very twisted. Very twisted. There's this scene in this book, I think it's chapter 16. I don't know, but if you know, you know. I don't know why I was attracted to it, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And it's kind of concerning. But if you're into that kind of vibe, I would check it out. Okay, next, drastically changing the vibes from that, let's do a couple of more lighthearted, cutesy, rom-com-y type of books. Let's talk first about Angelika Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne. This is the newest book by Sally Thorne. It just came out in the last month or two, and Sally Thorne, if you don't know, she's the author of The Hating Game, which is so many people's favorite book, including mine. It is my favorite rom-com ever, so I'm always going to give Sally Thorne a try when she comes out with something new. But this story is very interesting. It's basically like a modern day retelling of Frankenstein if Frankenstein had a younger sister. So this story follows Angelika Frankenstein, obviously, and she lives in this mansion with her brother Victor, and Victor Frankenstein, much like the original story, is a mad scientist, and he is trying to build a monster, trying to build a Frankenstein monster. And Angelika, because she has grown up with Victor and they have been orphans for so long, she's always helped him with his scientific experiments. Like, she has not been very wanted by the men of the town. Like, she's entering her mid-20s and she's still not married, which is very scandalous for this time period, and she wants nothing more than to be in love and to have a husband. And so while Victor is wanting to make his Frankenstein monster, she's also wants to make a match of her own, a monster of her own. She pretty much wants to make her perfect man. And so she goes with Victor to the local town morgue, and she basically finds this man. She comes upon him and he is like the most beautiful thing she's ever seen, and she's like, I pick you, you're my husband. He's dead, obviously, but so she basically takes his head and then combines him with other body parts. Like, she makes her perfect man, essentially. And her and Victor both bring their creations to life, and this man, he wakes up and he doesn't have any memories. He doesn't know what's going on. Obviously, he's been through something a little traumatic, like his body is not his own, but he doesn't remember anything. He doesn't know who he is, and he is attracted to Angelika right off the bat, but he's just like, I need to know more. Like, something doesn't feel right. I'm back from the dead. How did I die? Who am I? Do I have a family? And so Angelika is very saddened by this because she just wants him to like love her. She's kind of like spoiled. She's got a bit like, she's very much spoiled because they've lived alone in this house. They have a lot of money. Like, she's always been able to buy whatever she wanted. Like, all she wants is someone to love her. So she's not thrilled that he doesn't want to just like marry her and love her, but she's like, okay, fine, I'll help you figure out who you are. Let's try to learn more about you, because they don't know. So that's kind of what this book is. It's them figuring that out, and then it's very weird. It's a very weird, quirky book. Like, I've never read anything like this. It's not like my favorite book I've ever read, but for Halloween, like, it's a cute, easy, quick read, and it's very much got Sally Thorne's vibes to it, her interesting dialogue. Like, it was cute, it was an easy read, it was just something different, which sometimes you just need that every once in a while. Okay, next, this is another one. It's just warm and cozy. Like, it's not paranormal, it's not creepy, it's not scary, but to me, it feels like a Hallmark movie, and to me, that just feels like fall. And it's a super popular book. So many of you have probably already read it. If you haven't read it, you've definitely heard about it. It's Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's newest book, and when I read it, I really loved it, but I feel like this is one of those books where, like, as time has gone on, I've found myself liking it even more. Like, I found myself thinking about it and wanting to reread it, and it's just so good. But basically, it follows this girl named Nora Stevens, and she is very much your typical, like, boss bitch. Like, she lives in New York, she works as an editor, she's very much like a shark. She's just very laser focused on her career. That's always been her priority. She wants to climb the corporate ladder. She doesn't really care to, like, get married, have kids. Like, she's just living her life. I mean, she'd like to get married, let me take that back, but, like, it hasn't been her #1 priority. And so what's funny is because Nora works in books and she works in this book industry, like, she's very aware of books and tropes and how things go and the typical story, and she knows that she's not the girl that gets the guy. Like, she knows that she's the bitch that the guy leaves for some girl in some small town that owns a strawberry farm. Hating game, circling back to that. But yeah, like, she just knows. She's aware, but she's like, you know what? This is my life, whatever. Basically, she doesn't really have many people in her life, but the one person in her life that means the entire world to her is her little sister, Libby. And her and Libby have really bonded over this book together that they really loved and cherished. And the book is actually set in a real life small town called Sunshine Falls. And so Libby really just, like, knows Nora has been down recently. She's been dumped for, like, the millionth time. And Libby's like, Nora, we need to get away for a while. We need to go to Sunshine Falls. Let's spend a few weeks there. Let's just unplug, like, live our Hallmark movie life. Like, I want you to live like you're in a rom-com. I want you to find a man. Like, let's just go and have fun. And so Nora is not thrilled about this because leaving New York, leaving work is very stressful for her, but she is willing to do it for Libby. And so they go to this small, very picturesque, Hallmarky type of town, and it is all fun and games for a few minutes until she runs directly into this man named Charlie Lastra, who she has worked with in the past. He's also in the book industry. He's an editor, and they did not have a good meeting the last time they met. They very much bump heads with each other. It was just not a good time, and they could not work together. It simply was not going to happen. So now her showing up to this town and him being here, because it is such a small town, they can't not keep crossing paths multiple times. She can't stop running into him. And you see Nora go through this whole journey of, like, just trying to figure out what's important in life. It's one of those books, like, she's been so focused on her career and she loves her career. And that's something that I love so much about this book is, like, it's not a book where, like, every character just completely changes throughout the course of it. Like, Nora is a very strong-willed character that I love and adore so much. Like, she knows exactly what she wants in life, and she's not willing to sacrifice that in any type of way because she shouldn't have to. And so you get to just see her whole journey of, like, learning about love, accepting love. Like, it's really so much a story about her and her sister and, like, their bond together. Like, the family cozy aspects to this book are so cute, so good. Again, everything in the small town is so freaking cute. But yeah, I just loved it. Totally, this book for me, it just screams fall vibes. So if you haven't read it yet, check it out. All right, y'all, we gotta circle back to another very iconic Colleen Hoover book. And once I mentioned Layla, a bunch of you probably knew it was coming, but we gotta talk about it. It's Verity. This is my first book that I ever read by Colleen Hoover, which is funny because it is nothing like her other books. I said Layla was nothing like her other books, but this one, for real, if you know Colleen Hoover is like a cutesy little emotional romance author, this couldn't be further from that. Like, Verity is straight up a crazy thriller that just still to this day could give me nightmares. I had actual nightmares the first time I read it, but in the best possible way. You know how it goes. So this story follows this girl named Lowen, and Lowen is an author. She's been a struggling author as of recently, but at the start of this story, she is basically approached with this offer to finish out this series for this very iconic author named Verity Crawford. Verity, unknowingly to the public, has gotten in this horrible accident and she is not able to write anymore. She's essentially a vegetable. She can't speak, she can't talk, she has brain damage, like she can't move, like she's very much being taken care of and she's unable to finish this series. And her publisher wants to see it finished, so they basically offer Lowen a deal to be the ghostwriter for this series and finish it out. And Lowen is very desperate because she is currently very broke, and you know, it's an honor, obviously. Verity Crawford is an iconic author, so she agrees to do it. So a part of this deal is she needs to learn more about Verity, learn more about this series. She needs to go and review Verity's notes that she has behind this series. So she goes and stays at the Crawford house for what is supposed to be a week or so that she can go through Verity's office and find anything that she could use to help her write this series. And right upon getting there, right upon meeting Verity's husband and her son, you know, she just gets some weird vibes. She's not quite sure. Verity is there. She has a caretaker. Again, she doesn't talk, she doesn't move, but things are just a little creepy. And that thought is confirmed whenever she's digging through Verity's office and comes across this manuscript that was never released and probably was never meant to be seen by anybody. And it is basically an autobiography written by Verity about her and her husband's love life and things that happened in their life. And as soon as she starts reading it, she realizes that Verity is one crazy biatch. But yeah, this book absolutely kept me on the edge of my seat. It was terrifying. It was so crazy, so bonkers. Like I need to reread this, but I'm also scared too. Like that's how much it messed with my head. It nauseated me at times. Like it was just a wild ride, but so good. If you haven't read this one yet, I seriously recommend doing it for this time of year. Okay, and lastly, last but certainly not least, I want to talk about a series. And this series is actually my favorite series of all time. And if you guys have followed me for a long time, you're probably rolling your eyes and exiting the video because you already know what I'm going to talk about. It's the Devil's Night series by Penelope Douglas. This series, where do I begin? I just love it with my entire heart and soul. It, much like Haunting Adeline, like I just said earlier, it's not going to be for everybody. It's a dark romance. It's a very spicy romance. Like, there's a lot of like aspects to this series and to Penelope Douglas's writing in general. I always say you gotta just like throw your feminism and common sense out the window for the duration of your read, because you just gotta let yourself enjoy it. Like just let it happen, and if you let it happen, I promise, I hope at least that you will enjoy it, because oh my god, this series literally has my whole heart. I'm actually in the process of rereading it and annotating it right now for this season, because that's just how much I love it. If I haven't convinced you already, I guess I'll tell you what it's about. Basically, this story follows these 4 boys that have grown up in this very small, rich community, and they are basically the 4 sons of the 4 most richest, iconic sort of men in this community. And growing up together, they were on the basketball team at their high school, and they were the stars of the basketball team. They just ran the school. Nobody messed with them. Everyone just knew to stay away from them. And they actually went by this term. They called themselves the 4 Horsemen. And the 4 Horsemen were known for just in general, like causing havoc, just getting into trouble. But what they're really known for is every year on Devil's Night, which is the night before Halloween, that is where they pull their craziest stunts. They will throw big parties, ragers, they vandalize things, they pull pranks, like lots of crazy things go down on Devil's Night every year. And all of this is fine and good for several years, but one year, Devil's Night does not go the way the boys planned, and 3 of the 4 boys actually end up in prison. They end up arrested. And so now, present day, it's years later, those boys are out of prison, and they're basically ready to return to this town, ready to reclaim their thrones as like the leaders of this community, and also get revenge on anybody that played any sort of part in getting them in prison. So each of these 4 books focuses on each of the 4 boys and like a different relationship they're having with a different girl. Each of the books goes from the present to the past to that original Devil's Night years ago in high school, and like what happened. You've got dual point of view. It's just so spicy, and it's one of those things where it's like each book focuses on a different guy, but it's like the overall story continues to build, and like the more you know about each of the guys, just the more amazing it gets and the more beautiful. And it's just, I have such an attachment to this story. Like I have never read spice like this in my entire life. Like I'm just gonna throw that out there. This was a cultural awakening for me. And but it's not just that, like the story, the story is so good. Like the plot is so good. The entire time you're just like so enthralled. They're so easy to read. You just fly through them and you want to read them all over again. Like by the time I got to the end, I had like a gaping hole in my heart because I was so close to these characters and this story in this town, and I just like never wanted it to end. So yeah, Definitely recommend reading this if you're into the spicy stuff, and it's so perfect for this time of year because every one of the books flashes back to Devil's Night, which is like literally right before Halloween. Very much fall vibes. Like it just works. It's so good. But yeah, guys, those are all the books I have to talk to you about. This video was probably so long, but you know how it goes. If you guys have read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them down below. If you have any other fall recommendations, give them to me. I'd love to read them. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Happy reading. That was not cute. Okay, bye.